The ACT science section is 6 passages. You have 35 minutes to do it, which works out to 5 minutes, 50 seconds per passage. Despite its name, it's really not much of a science section. It's actually a lot more like a reading section. You're going to be reading data and tables and charts and graphs and all that kind of thing. But more like a reading section. It doesn't require outside science knowledge except on a few rare questions. There are a few topics that the ACT will ask over and over again. For example, what's neutral pH? For some reason, comes up again and again. So there are a couple things like that that we can talk about. But the other thing, sometimes they throw something random in there, but usually it's something, if you've taken science class and paid a little bit of attention, you'll be okay. The biggest problem with the science section that most people have is that there just isn't enough time to do as thorough a job as you would like. So to do this section quickly, the big tip is to not read the experiment, go right to the questions. And you're going to learn about the experiment described in the passage through answering the questions. So those questions are in order of complexity. So the simple questions in the beginning give you kind of a little introduction to what you're looking at. Sometimes you answer a question and you don't know what it is. You just know that based on the table or the graph that you've looked at, that this is the right answer. You don't know what it means, but that's okay, because that little piece of information that you gained gets logged away in your brain somewhere. And then when you add to that a few more questions, the picture begins to take shape in your mind. And by the time you get to the end, those more complicated questions, you should have a pretty good sense of what's going on. So the questions tend to, not always, but most of the time, they'll give you specific directions about where in the data of the passage you should look, which table, which graph. So go there. Sometimes the question will say, according to the passage or according to the information provided. And in that case, you need to go read some description. But otherwise, don't bother. So don't do it unless you have to. And then when you're doing that, you're looking for something very specific, which is an easier and more efficient task. The other thing to keep in mind is that within a section or within a specific passage, you don't need to do the questions in order. So sometimes you come to a question, if it's like a medium level complexity question, and it just doesn't make any sense because you don't know what's going on yet. So that's okay, just skip that one. And you can probably do the next one or some other ones. So do the ones that you can. And then as you do those, again, that big picture will start to take shape. And then you'll be able to go back and do the ones that didn't make sense to you at first. Probably they will make sense to you now. So don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out one individual question when the problem is that you don't know the experiment. So recognize that that's the problem. And if that is the problem, just skip it and then come back at the end of the passage or somewhere after you've done a couple more questions. So there's a bit more to the science passage as you might expect, but I hope this is a helpful introduction.